Reduce, reuse, recycle. A formula for a greener, cleaner future. That's what American folk hero Pete Seeger said anyway. Recycling turns waste into raw material for new products. This prevents massive landfills from building up and helps prevent the need to use fresh new materials for every product. But there are some sneaky imposters in your recycling bin. They look the part, but when they show up at a facility, they're about as welcome as a raccoon at a dinner party. But don't tell that to Rocket. I'm Mike with List25, and these are 25 surprising things that can't be recycled. Just in time for Pride Month, glitter is back for its annual sparkling cameo in parades and celebrations. But behind the colorful, shiny bits hides an environmental menace. Did you know that glitter is litter? It was actually banned in Pride parades in Sydney, Australia in 2019. You see, glitter is made from microplastics, typically PET or PVC. It's coated with reflective materials like aluminum and the tiny little particles which are too small to be filtered out during recycling or wastewater treatment, and that can cause widespread contamination. They stick to everything, aren't recyclable nor compostable. Worse, they can linger in the environment indefinitely. The impacts of glitter go far beyond a mild inconvenience. The chemicals in glitter production can cause reproduction system damage, developmental issues, and even cancer. As microplastics, glitter particles act as carriers for toxic pollutants. It gets built up in soil, air, water, and the food chain. Marine animals often mistake these particles for food, leading to digestive problems, and can transfer those microplastics up the food chain to humans. While avoiding glitter entirely is the most eco-friendly option, it isn't the only solution. Greener alternatives are coming out, like biodegradable glitters made from mica or plant cellulose, which mimic the sparkle without the plastic. Bioglitter, for example, is made from responsibly sourced eucalyptus cellulose and is certified to biodegrade in natural environments, including fresh water. These innovations offer a more sustainable way to shine. I used to have so many CDs. Not just music, but all the PC games and the movies that we used to store on those shiny discs, which surprisingly are still hanging around. Even though they are plasticky, they're a real challenge to recycle. They're made from layers of plastic coated with reflective materials and other materials that recycling facilities just can't break down or separate. 2 of those components are fully recyclable, while the third one presents a challenge and requires significant effort to recycle effectively. This type of plastic takes 1 million years to fully decompose. Additionally, burning CDs can release chemicals such as hydrochloric acid and sulfur dioxide. If you're looking to get rid of a bunch, think about libraries or community centers that might accept them for reuse or donation. Or get creative and turn those old discs into DIY projects like coasters, art pieces, or even garden bird deterrents that reflect light and keep pests away. Either way, CDs and DVDs are better off out of the recycling stream to avoid contamination and machine jams. Or, you could just go old school and turn off your streaming services and party like it's 1999. Prince would be so proud. Don't get too clingy with this waste. That film from your leftovers or the shrink wrap that keeps your new electronics safe, plastic wrap is a major headache for recycling facilities. Thin and stretchy films can get all tangled up in sorting machines and conveyor belts, causing jams and shutdowns that can cost a pretty penny. Because they weigh next to nothing, they're basically invisible to the sorting systems, and they can slip through and cause damage further down the line. Recycling centers just aren't built to handle plastic wrap in curbside bins either, so tossing it in there only creates more problems. This stuff usually ends up being rejected and sent straight to the landfill anyway. If you want to be eco-friendly, try switching to reusable alternatives like beeswax wraps or silicone covers for your leftovers. According to plasticfilmrecycling.org, plastic film can sometimes be recycled if it can stretch and has a resin code of 2 or 4 indicated by an equilateral triangle. You can get info on recyclable items by checking a How to Recycle store drop-off label or scan the smart label on their packaging for instructions on recycling flexible films, if applicable. Bottom line, keep plastic wrap out of your recycling bin in most cases, and you might just help the machine avoid costly disruptions. You never know a man unless you've walked a mile in his shoes. And if you have, there's a chance he was wise enough to know about number 22 on today's list. Shoes with rubber soles are not that easy to recycle. Most are made from a complex mix of materials like fabrics, foams, adhesives, rubber, and plastic. They all get fused together in ways that recycling centers just can't separate. This combination means shoes usually aren't accepted in regular recycling programs. Instead of tossing your worn-out sneakers or boots in the bin, consider donating them if they're still wearable. Many organizations accept gently used shoes to help people in need or to repurpose materials. If yours are too worn, look for special recycling programs or collection events in your area that know how to break them down safely. By keeping old shoes out of the curbside bin, you help prevent contamination and support more effective reuse and recycling efforts. However, there are some examples of shoes being recycled through the manufacturer, like Nike, for example. Check the link in the description for how to recycle your old Nikes, at least. Disposable razors may seem small and simple, but they are a recycling nightmare. Most are made from a mix of metal blades and plastic handles fused together, making it impossible for facilities to separate and process the materials properly. When tossed into curbside bins, they just end up contaminating other recyclables or being sent to landfill. Fortunately, some brands and programs offer mail-back or special recycling options specifically for razors and similar personal care items. These programs take the time to safely break down the components and recycle what they can. Again, you can find the link in the description to see how you can send your razors back to the manufacturer. If you want to be more eco-friendly, consider switching to razors designed for easy recycling or reusable options that generate less waste, like a classic straight razor. Either way, tossing disposable ones in your regular recycling bin is a no-no. Paper cartons and takeout boxes. These often look like regular cardboard or paperboard, but there is a catch. They're typically lined with a thin layer of plastic or wax to keep moisture from soaking through. While that makes them great for holding liquids and food, it also means those recycling facilities cannot process them the same way as they would with plain cardboard. So they often get rejected at the sorting plant and become trash. So even if you think you're doing the right thing by tossing them in the bin, well, you're not fooling anyone. Portland, Oregon, for example, does not accept frozen food boxes. However, some cities are able to separate them from the rest, such as Oklahoma City, which accepts them in their big green recycling bins, or Minneapolis, which differentiates between different ones and sorts some into their recycling stream and others into the garbage. Knowing the difference between regular cardboard and these coated containers can help you avoid accidental contamination and keep the recycling stream clean and efficient. That leftover pad thai grease might seem harmless, but it's actually a big deal at a recycling plant. Here's the thing. Recycling only works when the materials are clean. Food residue, especially oils and sauces, soak into the cardboard and contaminate plastics. When greasy containers go into the bin, they don't just get tossed out individually. They can spoil an entire load of recyclables, making it all unusable and destined for the landfill. It's not just paper and cardboard. Plastic containers that haven't been rinsed can clog up machines and lower the quality of the recycled plastic. That's why most programs say containers need to be clean and dry. If you can't scrub off the sauce or scrape out the leftovers, don't toss it into the bin hoping someone else will fix it. However, some clear plastic containers labeled number 1 or 2 can be recycled, and some fiber-based containers may be suitable for composting. The solution? Do a quick rinse if the container is recyclable and you're not too full from dinner. If it's soaked through or caked with food, it's better off in the trash or compost, depending on your local program. One greasy mistake can mess up a lot of good recycling, so when in doubt, clean it out or throw it out. Things like mugs, plates, and broken pottery may look like glass, but they're quite different when it comes to recycling. Ceramics don't melt at the same temperature as glass, which means if they get mixed into your recycling bin, they can cause big problems at the plant. Even a small piece of ceramic can contaminate an entire batch of glass, making it completely unusable. Because of this, most curbside programs won't accept ceramics at all. Instead, it's better to find ways to reuse these items around your home. A chipped mug can become a handy pen holder on your desk or a quirky planter for small plants. Sometimes facilities that recycle bricks and concrete will recycle ceramics. If you have broken pottery or pottery you no longer want, consider donating them to schools or craft groups for art projects. Otherwise, they're better off in the trash than the recycling bin. Keeping ceramics out of recycling helps make sure the rest of your glass gets processed smoothly. These long, flexible tubes might seem harmless, but recycling facilities see them as a major headache. Because of their length and flexibility, garden hoses behave like snakes, slithering through the recycling system, wrapping around the machinery and causing jams. These tangles lead to costly shutdowns and repairs, slowing down the entire process. The EPA even has photos showing garden hoses wrapped tightly around conveyor belts, completely halting operations. It's not just an inconvenience. It's a safety hazard for workers and a major expense for facilities. That's why most curbside programs explicitly ask you to keep hoses out of the bin. If your garden hose is worn out or broken, check if your local waste facility offers special drop-off or recycling programs for them. Otherwise, best to cut it up and toss it in the trash or find creative ways to reuse pieces around your yard. Either way, don't let your hose become the villain in your recycling plant. Now, I have collected a lot of plastic toys over the years, and some of them I honestly wish I held on to, because they'd probably be worth quite a bit of money to collectors these days. Even Elliot from E.T. liked playing with Star Wars action figures. I mean, I had so many Star Wars, X-Men, Spider-Man, the Millennium Falcon. Oh, where is that? I missed that. At first glance, plastic toys might seem like simple plastic objects that could be recycled like any other plastic item, but the reality is far messier. Most are made from a mix of different plastics, sometimes combined with metal parts, batteries, or electronic components. This blend makes it nearly impossible for recycling centers to sort and process them properly. Because of these mixed materials, tossing them into your curbside bin usually does more harm than good. Instead of breaking down and getting reused, they often end up contaminating other recyclables or simply being rejected at the facility. If the toys are still in good condition, donate them to local charities, schools, or thrift stores, which is a much better way to give them a second life. If they're broken or no longer useful, get creative. Repurpose them into garden decorations, art projects, or even DIY planners that can be a fun way to keep them out of the landfill. Either way, it's best to keep plastic toys out of your recycling bin to help keep the system running smoothly. You can always submit them for Ryan's toy reviews. And of course, organizations like Toys for Tots are always willing to take your old toys for a good cause. Here's a bright idea. Don't put your regular incandescent light bulbs in your recycling bin, because they are made from a mix of glass and metal that most curbside programs cannot handle. But things get trickier with CFLs and fluorescent bulbs. These types contain small amounts of mercury. No, not him. It's a toxic heavy metal that poses serious health and environmental risks if released. Because of that, the EPA recommends never tossing them in the trash or recycling bin. Instead, they should be taken to a hazardous waste facility or a participating store program that knows how to safely handle and recycle them. I believe usually stores like Lowe's or Home Depot or even IKEA have a disposable program available. Many hardware stores offer drop-off points for these bulbs, so check locally before getting rid of them. Proper disposal keeps mercury out of the environment and protects everyone involved. Aerosol cans that still have product left inside are more dangerous than you might think. Whether they're full or even partially full, these cans are pressurized containers, and if they're crushed or heated during the recycling process, they can explode. Now, that is a lot of liability for the casual graffiti enthusiast to keep in mind, but this also applies for those fancy air fresheners everyone loves to spray around the house. This isn't just a minor safety concern. It can cause serious injuries and damage to the facility. Because of that risk, most recycling centers won't accept aerosol cans unless they're completely empty and depressurized. If you have cans that aren't empty, don't just toss them into the bin hoping for the best. Instead, take them to a hazardous waste disposal site or a specialized collection event. It's the safest way to handle these containers and keeps recycling workers out of harm's way. Always check with your local waste management program for guidelines on aerosol can disposal to make sure you're doing it right. If the can contains hazardous materials, like some paint, solvents, or pesticides, it may need to be disposed of at a designated household hazardous waste facility, or HHW. Look for labels with words like toxic, flammable, or corrosive. Again, check out the description for how to handle this problem so you too can make a difference. You might think shredding your sensitive documents is the responsible thing to do, but when it comes to recycling, shredded paper is a headache. Those tiny little pieces are tough for sorting machines. They slip through the cracks, get tangled in equipment, and often contaminate whole batches of recyclables. The best way to recycle shredded paper is to collect it in a paper bag or cardboard box to keep it contained. Then, check with your local center to see if they accept it. Otherwise, it might be better off than trash can, or even better, used for compost or packing material at home. Your toothbrush might seem like a tiny thing, but when it comes to recycling, it is surprisingly problematic. Most are made from a mix of materials: a plastic handle, nylon bristles, and those components are tightly bonded together, making separation and proper recycling nearly impossible. Traditional facilities simply aren't equipped to handle such items, meaning that your old toothbrush is likely to end up in a landfill, where it can take hundreds of years to decompose. However, there are eco-friendly alternatives and solutions you can explore to reduce this waste. Some companies now offer toothbrush recycling programs, where you can mail back used toothbrushes to be repurposed into new products. These programs ensure materials are properly separated and processed in specialized facilities. You can also opt for biodegradable toothbrushes made from bamboo or other plant-based materials. These decompose much faster and are often paired with compostable packaging, making them a more sustainable choice. Switching to sustainable options or finding clever ways to repurpose your toothbrush may seem like a small effort, but collectively, these actions can make a big difference in reducing plastic waste. Used napkins and paper towels might seem like they belong right in the recycling bin, but this assumption couldn't be further from the truth. Once they've been used to wipe up spills, grease, food, or other messes, they are contaminated and no longer good for recycling. Materials soaked in oils or substances can ruin the clean paper in the batch. Even if they appear dry, the fibers in these products are already too short and degraded to be recycled effectively. However, all hope isn't lost. If you have a compost bin, used paper towels and napkins can still serve a purpose. They break down naturally and enrich the soil, turning what was once waste into something beneficial for gardens and plants. Check out the description for a compost guide. For those who don't compost, these items will unfortunately need to go into the trash, but it's worth considering starting a compost system to reduce such waste. Clothes hangers seem harmless enough, right? They're just hanging in your closet doing their job. But when it comes to recycling, they are a total disaster. Plastic ones, metal ones, even those fancy velvet-covered ones, they all cause problems. Their odd shapes and long arms make them difficult for machines to handle, and they tend to get stuck in conveyor belts or jam up the sorting equipment. That means more shutdowns, more delays, and more headaches for recycling facility workers. Most curbside programs don't accept them for this reason. If your hangers are still in decent shape, your best bet is to donate them to a thrift store or a dry cleaner. Or you could find a way to reuse them at home. You might assume that paper is always safe to recycle, but that isn't necessarily the case. Many receipts, particularly those handed out at grocery stores, gas stations, and ATMs, are printed on thermal paper. This type of paper has a distinct slick and shiny texture, which is due to a chemical coating that often includes substances like BPA or BPS. These chemicals are the same harmful compounds that people try to avoid in plastic bottles and food containers because of their potential health risks. When thermal paper is mistakenly placed in the recycling bin, those chemicals don't simply vanish. Instead, they risk contaminating the recycling stream and can end up in newly created paper products like napkins, toilet paper, or even food packaging. This spread of toxic substances undermines recycling efforts and poses additional risks to public health. Unless your local recycling program explicitly mentions that it accepts thermal paper, which is uncommon, receipts should not be placed in the recycling bin. The most responsible thing to do is put them in the trash. An even better solution is to opt for digital copies of receipts whenever possible, letting you skip the printed slip entirely. Mirror, mirror on the wall, are you recyclable at all? At first glance, mirrors may seem like just another piece of glass that belongs in the recycling bin. However, when it comes to recycling, they are an entirely different story. Unlike bottles and jars, they are a reflective coating applied to the back, which renders them unsuitable for standard processes. This coating doesn't melt down in the same way as regular glass during recycling, and placing mirrors in the bin can contaminate other recyclable materials. Even when a mirror shatters, it can't simply be treated like regular broken glass. Recycling facilities generally avoid them due to the challenges posed by their composition. The reflective layer prevents them from being processed efficiently, and sorting them from recyclable glass can be near impossible. Sounds like at least 7 years of bad luck. That doesn't mean mirrors can't have a second life, though. If you have broken ones, consider repurposing them for creative projects like mosaics or decorative crafts. Also, some specialty recycling centers might accept mirrors, but it's worth checking locally for options. In most cases, they're better off being disposed of in the trash. You've seen it everywhere. Packing peanuts, takeout containers, coffee cups, and those weird white blocks nestled in electronics boxes. So, Styrofoam might seem harmless, even convenient, but in the world of recycling, it is a notorious troublemaker. The material, technically known as expanded polystyrene, EPS, is lightweight, fragile, and prone to breaking into countless tiny pieces that scatter everywhere. These fragments aren't just difficult to clean up, they also spread through recycling streams, contaminating other recyclables and making entire batches unsuitable for processing. But the trouble doesn't stop there. Styrofoam's composition makes it nearly impossible for most standard facilities to manage. Unlike more straightforward materials like paper or aluminum, EPS requires specialized equipment to process. Very few facilities possess the technology to handle it, and even those that do face significant logistical challenges due to the material's bulk and low economic value. Worse, Styrofoam poses a serious threat to the environment. Its lightweight nature allows it to easily escape waste collection systems, ending up in waterways, forests, or urban areas, where it can persist for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Wildlife frequently mistakes it for food, leading to ingestion that can cause blockages or even death. For individual consumers, Styrofoam's options remain limited. Unless you live near a specialized drop-off center that accepts EPS, your local curbside recycling program likely won't be able to process it. This leaves landfilling as the most common solution, though it's far from ideal. However, there are steps you can take to minimize its impact. Choose alternatives like biodegradable packaging or recyclable material like cardboard. Reuse Styrofoam whenever possible. Those grocery bags, produce bags, and every crinkly little wrapper you get from the store are a nightmare for recycling centers. While they seem harmless, they wreak havoc once they hit the sorting line. These things tangle up in the machinery like clinging X's that just won't let go. When one gets caught in the gears, the whole plant has to shut down so workers can climb in and cut it loose. It's dangerous, annoying, and costs a lot of time and money. Part of the problem is how plastic bags are made. They're lightweight, flimsy, and flexible, which makes them incredibly convenient for carrying goods, but a huge problem for recycling. While some grocery stores and retailers offer recycling bins specifically for plastic bags, these programs often depend on consumers remembering to bring them in, which doesn't always happen. Even when they are collected, the process is complex and expensive. Specialized equipment is required to break them down into reusable pellets, but the cost often outweighs the benefit. The environmental impact of plastic bags stretches far beyond recycling centers. Because they're so lightweight, they can easily be carried away by the wind, finding their way into rivers, oceans, and natural habitats. Once there, they can persist for hundreds of years, breaking down into microplastics that further pollute ecosystems and harm wildlife. Consumers can take several steps. First, opt for reusable shopping bags made from materials like canvas, jute, or recycled plastic, which can be used multiple times and are far more durable. If you do end up with plastic bags, find ways to reuse them around the house. For example, as liners for small trash bins or storing items. Ultimately, reducing reliance on plastic bags altogether is the best solution. Many cities and countries have already implemented bans or fees on single-use plastic bags, encouraging citizens to adopt more sustainable habits. Plastic utensils that often come with takeout meals present multiple challenges when it comes to recycling. While they may seem recyclable because, well, they're plastic, the reality is more complicated. These are typically made from low-grade plastics like polystyrene or polypropylene, which are not accepted by many municipal recycling programs. Even in areas where they are technically recyclable, utensils often get excluded due to their physical characteristics. The small size and irregular shape of plastic utensils make them difficult to sort. During processing, materials move along conveyor belts and pass through a series of mechanical sorters that separate recyclables by size, weight, and type. Plastic utensils are so lightweight that they often fall through the gaps in the machinery or slip past the sensors entirely. Also, plastic utensils are often sold with food residue, which further reduces their chances of being recycled. The combination of low-grade material, food contamination, and problematic size makes them a poor candidate for recycling in most communities. As a result, they are typically sent to the landfill even when placed in recycling bins. To reduce waste, it's better to opt for reusable utensils or look for compostable alternatives when possible. Paper coffee cups are often mistaken for being recyclable because they appear to be made entirely of, paper. They're lightweight, usually carry eco-friendly branding, and seem like the kind of item that belongs in a recycling bin. However, most of them are lined with a thin layer of plastic. This coating is essential to prevent liquid from leaking through the paper, especially with hot beverages. The problem is that the paper and plastic are tightly bonded, making it difficult for standard facilities to separate the two during processing. So most systems are unable to handle paper coffee cups. Facilities that lack the specialized equipment needed to separate the lining from the paper will treat them as contaminants. When placed in the recycling bin, they can end up disrupting the recycling stream or being sorted out and sent to a landfill anyway. Only a limited number of advanced facilities have the ability to properly process these cups, and while they're not available in most areas. The result is that millions of the cups, despite their appearance, end up as waste. To reduce environmental impact, some cities encourage reusable cups or offer special collection programs, but in most places, the standard paper coffee cup still can't be recycled. Plastic straws are a common recycling challenge due to their small size and lightweight nature. Straws often slip through the sorting equipment at facilities because they're too light to be effectively captured by the machines designed to separate recyclables. Instead of being sorted properly, they can end up clogging or damaging the machinery, causing operational issues. Because of this, plastic straws are frequently identified as a major contaminant in the recycling stream. The EPA highlights plastic straws as one of the top materials that hinder efficiency. Their narrow shape and tendency to fall through sorting screens mean they rarely make it to the final product. Instead, they often contaminate other materials or end up wasted, defeating the purpose of recycling entirely. Due to these factors, most programs recommend that straws be disposed of in the trash rather than recycling bins. Despite being made of recyclable plastic, the physical characteristics of plastic straws prevent them from being processed effectively through conventional recycling systems, contributing to contamination and inefficiencies. Throwing them away isn't great, as they often get consumed by wildlife, which isn't good for their bodies either. Plastic straws can sicken and kill seabirds, fish, sea turtles, manatees, dolphins, and other marine wildlife when they get stuck in their noses, throats, or stomachs. Plastic straws break down into microplastics when they're exposed to sunlight, waves, wind, and temperature extremes. Those tiny particles infiltrate the bodies of living things, including us humans. Best to stick to reusable straws or the biodegradable kind if you can. And yes, paper straws suck, or they don't, and that's their problem, but some of the new biodegradable ones aren't too bad. Despite their shiny metallic appearance, these bags are constructed from multiple layers of different materials, including plastic and metallized film. This is designed to keep chips fresh and crunchy by providing a stronger barrier against moisture and air. However, the layers are tightly bonded together, making it impossible for facilities to separate them during processing. Because recycling programs, especially curbside ones, rely on sorting and processing materials that can be cleanly separated into single streams like paper, plastic, or metal, foil-lined chip bags pose a problem. Mixed materials can't be effectively recycled with standard methods. When these bags are accidentally placed in recycling bins, they can contaminate entire batches of recyclables, leading to more waste being sent to landfills. For this reason, most municipal recycling guidelines advise against placing foil-lined chip bags in curbside recycling, or crisp bags if you're in the UK. In fact, the problem with multi-layer packaging like chip bags is recognized widely in the waste management community. Without specialized facilities that can mechanically or chemically separate these materials, foil-lined bags remain non-recyclable in typical household recycling programs. This is why it's best to keep them out of the recycling bin to avoid contamination and rejection of recyclable materials. It's honestly really better to toss them in the trash. Greasy pizza boxes present a unique challenge when it comes to recycling. The oil and cheese residue that seeps into the cardboard contaminates the fibers, making the entire box unsuitable for recycling. This happens because the recycling system relies on clean paper fibers to be broken down and repurposed. When grease and food residues are present, they coat the fibers and prevent them from properly separating during the pulping process at facilities. As a result, the contaminated cardboard cannot be recycled and is often diverted to landfills or incinerators. This issue is well documented by the EPA, which explains that food contamination in paper products like pizza boxes reduces their recyclability. This contamination compromises the quality of recycled paper products and can damage recycling machinery if processed. Consequently, most recycling guidelines recommend removing any greasy or heavily soiled parts of pizza boxes before recycling. Clean sections without food residue may still be accepted, but the oily parts must be discarded as trash. So while pizza boxes are made of recyclable material, the presence of grease and food waste often prevents them from being properly recycled. To minimize waste, consumers can try to peel off clean sections of the box for recycling or consider composting if local facilities accept soiled cardboard. Recycling is great, but only when you do it right. Otherwise, you're just making things worse for everyone trying to clean up this planet. Stay smart, stay green, and check out this other list about going green. For more info on recycling guidelines and best practices, you can visit www.epa.gov/recycle. And as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content, and I'll catch you next time.